everyone. Welcome back to the CCO Follow podcast. Over the course of this month, we are talking about stewardship. And today, we hope to be talking about stewarding opportunities. We have the wonderful Steve Gideon on. Last time we had you on, we were talking about being an ambassador for Christ. And I'm excited because, you know, this is kind of that next little step of, you know, we're ambassadors for Christ and we steward over his stuff. And so today we're going to be talking about stewarding opportunities. Just to kind of jump right in, before we even talk about anything about opportunities, I'm just curious for you, what does stewarding mean to the Steve Gideon?
Well, as I was thinking about this, it dawned on me that praise God, I've forgotten completely how I would define the word steward. Automatically implies other people's stuff, or in this case, in my life, God's stuff.
Yeah.
God provides all the resources, all the opportunities. And I thought, if I weren't a Christian, would that word even, what would it mean?
Yeah.
You know, I'm not sure.
Yeah.
But everything is, I just assume, from the air I breathe to the food, water, opportunities, everything, my whole life ought to be, and kind of like an ambassador, part of being an ambassador is it's how you steward all the wonderful resources that God provides.
That's great. That's perfect.
Wait a minute. Now, you actually use the word steward in defining stewardship. Oops.
That happens.
It happens. And it's probably going to happen to
a lot.
Talking about opportunity today. But Travis, you know, when we're talking about stewarding opportunities, what do we mean by that?
So, stewarding, like you said, it's things that are trusted in your care that are not yours, but someone else's. And then opportunities is kind of whenever you are given, whether it be a time, treasure, talents. So usually when people think opportunities, they usually think about a moment in time, where it's like they're given some kind of influence to speak to someone or to, you know, make something happen. But it could also be an opportunity of, you know, financial, you can do something financially, you can do something with your talents, you can do something with your time. But essentially when you're given this ability to take something you have, time, treasures, talents, and invest it in some way.
Yeah.
Invest it into a person, invest it into a situation, invest it into what have you, to make it more than it is. You know, like the example that immediately comes to mind is like with Mordecai and Esther, where he's like, you know, you've been given such a time as this so that you may save many people. And that would be what we'd call an opportunity. She had an opportunity to take the time she had and the influence she had and to use it in a way that would glorify God and save people, or squander that opportunity and not see that redemption come through her and through her being a good steward.
Yeah.
And so that's the default one that comes to mind, but I think it can encapsulate in so many ways of life.
I think the key thing that stood out to me when you were saying that is given influence and this idea of investing, you know, making something more of it.
Yeah.
Steve, now you know why we have you on. But yeah, I guess talking about that, you know, what kind of opportunity?
And just as a note, I think this isn't a required thing with opportunities, but I think it's a good reminder that opportunities are usually timely. Like usually it's not opportunities don't usually just stay there forever. Yeah. Like you are given the opportunity maybe to witness to this friend or this family member for a specific period of time, and if you either take it or you don't.
Yeah.
And some opportunities I think are more situational than others and are shorter than others, but I think in general there's some sort of time frame when you look at opportunities. They're not forever.
Yeah, that's really good. So now we kind of have an idea of opportunity and what that means. What are some opportunities that you have had to steward over, you've been able to steward over in your life, and maybe some that stick out to you?
Well, let me get back for a second, because I'm intrigued that you immediately, the first thing you said was moment in time, which is, I thought of that too, is when I think of opportunity, it seems like there's a moment in time, or what was the second way you put it? Fleeting. You didn't say that, but they come and go, because God's resources, you know, just all the time. He's providing some resources, and a lot of the resources he provides is for my and Glenna's own well-being.
Yeah.
Thank you, Lord, for that. And so we've got to be good stewards of even taking care of ourselves, because that's his blessing. He wants us to. But in as much as we have resources that can go beyond that, what do you do with those? And then the opportunistic ones that you're talking about. The first thing that I thought of is the famous philosopher Yogi Berra. And when he said, when you come to a fork in the road, take it. And I'm not sure he's really that brilliant or as dumb as most of his famous sayings say, or whether or not he even should get that attribution. But nevertheless, I've thought about that a lot and thought that, that's true, is because when we come to a fork in the road, we could just sit on our hands.
Yeah.
And so
Absolutely.
that's one
An
way.
indecision, yeah.
Indecision or whatever. And dare I say, pray so long as to whether or not the Lord wants us to do that, that the opportunity has come and gone, and then it becomes a moot point. And now I'm going to confess, as I probably did in the first time podcast, that I am horrible at waiting on the Lord. Horrible. And so I wait on the Lord about 10 to 20 seconds for his outside voice. And then I say, well, Lord, I just can't see where this would displease you.
Yeah.
I'm going to make a decision. I'm going to go ahead and step out. So anyway, specifically to your point, I have to use the opportunity to go to Fiji.
Oh, yeah.
I can't help, because that's a recent and a pretty big one.
Yeah.
By the way, when it comes to opportunities, I don't pray at all in the mornings for God to provide opportunities. That seems ridiculous. I pray that I'll recognize them when he shows them to me.
Yeah.
Give me clarity, Lord. Please don't, because we do a report at the end of the day, every day. And I want him to show me missed opportunities. And he's very gracious and sweet as he's saying, well, remember that moment. A lot of times it's an opportunity to witness with a client.
Yeah.
And he's never, ever mean about it, but he nudges me because I've asked him to.
Yeah.
And so review, because I don't want to miss it the next time.
Yeah.
So I look at missed opportunities a lot so that I don't miss the next one. But anyway, so that opportunity to go to Fiji was incredible, because I have absolutely no skills. Except career-wise, I know a little bit about investing in money. And I said, when Larry came to me and said, would you like to go to Fiji? And I said, gosh, I'd love to go be a part of that crew.
Yeah.
But I know you're going to be building, and doing stuff, working with the kids or medical, and none of those, check any of my one box. And he said, no, you don't understand. They specifically asked for somebody to come and teach the staff about saving.
Wow.
And so that was just an incredible. Now there, God used his outside voice.
Yeah.
How am I going to wiggle out?
And it sounded like Larry.
How am I going to wiggle out of that? And so thank God, that I took that opportunity. But I also recognize that what God has in store, I have no idea.
Yeah. You just know
May
the next
not
step.
be,
Yeah.
About what they requested or what I'm going to plan for. So I was all prepared, to do that, but it became a lot more, as usual, these trips are a lot more relational.
Oh, yeah.
So praise God. I don't really care what bait God uses to get my attention. But that was the last one.
Yeah.
And, I'm not the last one, but it was a big one.
Yeah.
And
It was the most recent of the big,
Yes.
very clear. Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I think one thing about that is, when it comes to following God and giving and stewarding the things he's given us, including our time, which is a really big one because everything happens within time. We, at the end of the day, we don't really care how it pans out. Like as a steward, we just care that God gets what he wanted.
Yes.
And if what he wanted was for you to simply be there and to grow in your obedience when God says go, then he won.
Yeah.
I remember I taught some evangelism classes when I was in high school. It was a really big thing for me. And one of the things early on that I remembered being such an important thing to remind people of was that, so often we think about evangelism like, okay, so you evangelize to someone. The big question always is, did they get saved or not? Yeah. Did they get saved? And that can be such a a downer of a question.
It's kind of a loaded question.
It is a loaded question because it almost makes it sound like, so were you successful or not?
Yeah.
Like did this,
just not the reality.
And the important thing to remind people with sharing their faith and important with stewardship is, oh, did you share your faith? Did you offer the gospel and tell them? then it's already successful.
Yeah.
Yes.
Like by default,
Yeah.
obedience is success. And stewardship, like we said at the very beginning of the month, that Jesus says, well done, good and faithful servant, not good and
Yes.
successful servant. And so, whether it was God wanting you on that trip just so to grow in your obedience and grow in your hearing his voice when he says go, or it was because he wants you to accomplish a specific task or do this whatever thing, whatever the reason, and there's usually more than one, like you obeyed. Success. You can check it off as you stewarded well because you obeyed. And that's important to not forget, because sometimes we tie how it turns out to if we should have done that or not. And that's not at all what we should tie it to.
I'm so blessed and I was trying to think, when did I adopt this mindset? And I think I was a teenager when I decided that, because I would often disappoint myself. And finally I think the Lord shared with me, he says, you know what, Steve? Give it your best. Always give it your best. So even when I wasn't thinking about ambassadorship or even necessarily representing him well, I still wanted to at least try to put a smile on his face, even as a youngster. And he helped me realize, I smile every time you give it your best.
Yeah.
And so using the resources, just do your best, and then you're a man or a woman after God's own heart. And you're successful in that regard is that whether and by the way, do I always? No. And so I said, let me know when I, didn't do it. And again, we have that conversation every evening.
Yeah.
And he'll say, did you really give it 100%? No, not that much. Okay.
Yeah.
Just think about that. Do you want to?
Yeah.
And each time I say, yes, I still want to. Do you want more opportunities to witness all day long, Steve? Just checking in. And every day I said, yes, I really do. Okay.
Yeah.
That's the way those conversations
cool.
go.
Yeah. Throughout the Old Testament, especially the minor prophets, there's tons of times where God is rebuking his people for what they're doing, whether it being, they're serving with a half-hearted, half this idol, half God. They are giving God their second best, like, the lambs that don't meet the qualifications and things like that.
Blemishes.
Yeah, the blemishes. Thank you. Or or even like, I believe it's Amos, where he's like, you could even give 3 times a day, but the problem is your heart's not right. And he's like, I don't even care. And throughout all of these, it's never about the quantity or the quality or all these different things. It's about, what are they like? Are they giving God their best? Of whatever that is it actually their best?
That's the right
That's
attitude
/
motivation.
Yes.
What motivates you?
Yeah.
With regard to that right attitude, giving your very best, that looks different to each of us, I think. And,
we're each given different amount of talents.
Exactly.
The 5 and the 1 give different quantities and qualities based on what they're given from God.
Exactly. But that kind of brings into this idea. And, of course, I think of you, Steve, because it's your job, but this idea of investment. And when we are given opportunities, sometimes, like Travis was saying, those opportunities are, financial opportunities. And, okay, how can I, with this opportunity, if maybe it's like, oh, I got a different job and now I've actually been blessed with more per month than I need. So what should I do with this, extra? And when we're thinking of doing our best, sometimes that means investing it. Because instead of those opportunities that are more kind of moment to moment, but maybe they're, opportunities
season to season.
Season to season, the idea of like investing that and doing that well is really what the next best thing to do with it is. And so I'm curious for you guys, what are some things that we should or we can invest in instead of just kind of sitting in the fork of the road? Because sometimes I feel like, especially with, different seasonal things, time or money or whatever it is, it's really easy just to kind of, okay, I'll just keep sitting on that. At least we have it and that's good. How do we invest that? What should we be doing with that?
Well, somebody once said a long time ago, a pastor I had early on, that God can do more with a broken down jalopy that is moving than a brand spanking new EV, that's before EV, that is shedding idle, that is sitting at the curb. And that resonated with me. And that's not scriptural, but nevertheless, it still really resonates with me. And that's one of the reasons why again, I'll confess, I'm not good at waiting on the Lord. I'm just going to be moving. And I find that what the Lord says to me is when I'm saying, should I go here or should I go there? 2 opportunities, maybe, I think. We'll see. But should I do this? And I find that the Lord says more often than not, he says, Steve, are you going to take me? And are you going to be aware that I'm with you? Well, yes. Well, then just go. It's an adventure. Go. Take me with you and keep your eyes wide open because I'm going to bring opportunities. I'm going to bring others, of course, is the word that ought to be resonating as much as anything when it comes to stewardship.
Yeah. Because
it's, he wants us to bless others, not just to bless them and it ends there. No. It's a part of the Great Commission.
Yeah.
Not just about stuff. And it isn't even just about necessities of life. No. Every breath that you've been given is maybe one more breath to make the important decision. And to have that be the primary motivation, even in Fiji. And the second week, my buddy Randy and I stayed and went to the fun side of Fiji. And the very first day we're checking into one of the resorts that was decadent, I felt really guilty about where we had come from, Homes of Hope, to this. But I'm not going to travel that far and not see Fiji. So anyway, the very first day, within a few minutes of walking into the lobby, some of the help, they're intrigued, with white Americans.
Yeah.
They have a genuine curiosity, really nice, and genuine curiosity. And so he comes up to me and he says, what brings you here? And so on. I mentioned Homes of Hope and was able to describe what they do.
Yeah.
And human trafficking, of course, you're kind of heroic. And the still small voice said, are you just going to go there? Because if you do, you're going to be the start of this story if you stop here.
Yeah.
And I said, I don't want to be the star of any story. And so it compelled me, praise God, once again, he used his outside voice, and I shared the gospel, and I shared with that because I had a captive audience.
Yeah.
He had asked, and I said, but we're all in slavery. And it's not a question, we don't want to trade, and the Homes of Hope isn't just trading one form of slavery for another form of slavery.
Yeah.
And so I was able to share, bond servant of Christ, and that happened over multiple times a day at the resort. We went to 2 different resorts for the next week. And those were little teeny tiny opportunities every day that God made it so easy. I almost couldn't help sharing the gospel.
Correct me if I'm wrong, but it just seems to me that even when we're talking about, sharing the gospel to people and witnessing, in a way, we've been given that good news, and so our investment in that is telling others. And I think of that like an investment because those, you don't know what how that affected somebody right then and there. But
no,
it might have planted the seed, and God might be doing something in their hearts right now. I
did my best, and the rest is up to God.
Yeah, and that in my mind is seen as like an investment.
Yeah.
I think that's an investment.
Well, and in the parable of the sowing of the seeds and stuff like that, it's funny how liberally the seeds are being sown. They're just everywhere. They're on the path. They're in the rocky area.
It's
just
true,
there's no area that was deemed unfit to at least be told. And everywhere everywhere it's sent. And then like you were saying in a different parable, like it talks about how we don't know and we sow and it's like, this crop grew up to be 30, this one 60, this one 100. It's, like Paul says later in 1 Corinthians that it's, Apollos planted, I planted, Apollos watered, and God gave the growth. Yeah. And we don't know. We just do our part. That micro moment that you're in Fiji and probably never going to see that person again.
Right.
Or those people again. Because even if you go to Fiji again, it's unlikely to go to the exact same resort later or the exact same people you'll run into. But God had you there for a moment such as that, an opportunity. And who knows what God is doing. God was working in their life beforehand. He will be working in their life after. And you got to be there for a moment.
And I think this is so out of the blue, but I'm just thinking about this right now. Fear is, I think, the biggest deterrent in stewardship is when we begin to fear oh, am I supposed to do this with this? It creates that indecision, and that fear blocks us from then actually taking that opportunity. It's going to pass us by. Like Travis was saying, I think, fear, I guess how does fear affect you guys in your decisions?
Well, fear, or it can be your lack of self-confidence, which, when I hear myself say that, I hear God saying, what does your confidence in yourself have to do with this?
Yeah. Self-confidence is the biggest
And so
joke.
anyway, but fear or a lack of confidence, but to even back up, what were some of the considerations, sacrifice, you might say, before I committed to Fiji, and a lot of them were so lame. But it's an example. It wasn't necessarily fear. There was some fear.
Yeah.
Because I was fearful, concerned about how many shots. And I prayed about that immediately. Before I committed, I just said, what if there's a slew of shots, including, vaccines, a variety of times? And I don't care. I'm pretty ambivalent about it. But I prayed about it, and the Lord just made it clear, don't worry about it. Mm-hmm. Don't worry about it. Now, I'm an old man, and so it's easy to say, if that kills me, it kills me. I'm ready. But anyway, so there was fear, but also just a lack of self-confidence, can get in the way. And, of course, when it's here in the States, it's a fear of forfeiting relationships, forfeiting friendships, which is legitimate. But in this case, there was also some things like I am pretty, well, according to Glenna, I disagree with her, but according to Glenna, I'm a finicky eater.
Okay.
And so imagine being finicky.
Oh, yeah. You don't know what you're going to get.
No.
Oh, that's true.
I wasn't sure if I was going to be eating bugs, live fish. I had no idea. And so that played a role. And, Satan shoots
Oh, totally.
every speck of ammo, including, because it wasn't a no-brainer.
Yeah.
And plus the expense.
Yeah.
So it wasn't a no-brainer decision. I didn't accept the opportunity, but I recognized it, prayed about it, and thought about all these things. And Satan is just shooting everything. So discerning whether or not it's the Lord putting roadblocks in, and no, this isn't an opportunity I have provided you. And so just discerning, is this an opportunity that God, is this really an opportunity that God is providing? Does he really want me to go? Will this please him? And then are these roadblocks that God is putting in to say, no, he wants you to do this instead?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Or is it arrows that the enemy, when it gets down to my finicky eating, that's an easiness. That didn't come from God.
Yeah.
That is not God giving me a reason to not go. I say, so I didn't ask that out loud. I thought about it. And then Glenna said, what are you going to eat over there? And I said, well, maybe there's a McDonald's close by. But you know what? What God shifted, it was so fun, is I started to pray that there would be food that I would find delectable. And I felt like I got admonished for that, or at least nudged. And he instructed me, he said, no. Don't worry about that, Steve. Worry that you don't offend anybody. It changed everything. I quit that altogether. If I get sick and die, so be it. It's not going to surprise God.
Yeah.
But it might taste bad while you get sick and die.
I didn't think this was what was going to get Steve. He knows what's going to get me. And so I didn't need to pray about that. And I don't even have to pray, Lord, the things that really make me sick, that I can't even hardly stand to look at. And as seafood, believe it or not, is one of them. And I knew I'd probably be seeing on an island, So anyway, I just prayed, said, Lord, please don't let me hurt anybody's feelings, which had built into it, eat what's put in front of you.
Yeah.
And it blew my mind. Now, admittedly, I shifted, I reverted back to when I was a little boy and how you hide stuff on your plate and spread it out a little bit. Kids, I hope you're not listening. Don't do as I say. And you cover things with a napkin and stuff. But fish bones, no can do. But anyway, because of, you want to please the Lord. My life is so simple. All of this stuff, being an ambassador, being a witness, every day I say, boy, the possibility that I could put a smile on the God of the universe's face today motivates me. Have I ever? I don't know. But oh my goodness, am I motivated every day. And so I knew that he would really appreciate me eating that sometimes slimy look stuff. Believe it or not, as I said before, he ruins every single sacrifice that I've ever tried to do. The food was delicious.
Yeah.
Meal after meal. Lord, I'm trying to do something sacrificial.
Yeah.
Put something hideous in front of me, and I'm going to
Yeah.
eat it anyway. And I actually, kava is a drink that a lot of people can't tolerate. And at first, it was strange.
Yeah.
But in short order, I kind of developed a taste for it.
I love that. I think that's a really great. That's something I really haven't heard yet when we're talking about stewardship. Is it when we are placed in the right mindset of I'm a steward here, and all I'm trying to do is take this opportunity and do a good job with it. It eliminates a lot of our own kind of fleshly anxieties
Yes.
and worries and concerns,
Yeah.
and it's funny how the Lord gives us everything we need and even what we want sometimes. And it's funny that we're so just, when the enemy kind of makes us fear in certain things, we kind of hold back. But then in other things, we could be going the totally wrong way. God could be throwing, roadblocks in us, and we're just walking right through them. And it's just so funny that the way that we are being stewards in ourselves, if we're going our own way with it, it's like we're just blind to everything. But when we go His way, yeah, it can be scary, but He's always there and faithful to provide for us. I just love that.
Yeah, I think the enemy in the world and our flesh will always create obstacles to steward well, like the fear things, like other stuff like that. But the overarching experience of stewardship, when we have the right relationship with God and the right view of what stewardship is, it is a joy and it is peaceful and it is an exciting thing. You mentioned that you get to put a smile on God's face and you get to just steward this thing He gave you for His glory and enjoy the process. It makes me think back to that parable, as you said, of the talents, and how the one who buried it, when asked why, he said, well, I know that you're a harsh man who reaps where he didn't sow, and all these different things. His view of God was one of a very condemning,
Like a
very tyrant, just unhappy master.
Can I beg to disagree?
Okay.
I wouldn't call God a tyrant, certainly, but a harsh taskmaster with high expectations. I think that's probably true, and I think there's merit to, because wisdom begins with what?
Fear of the Lord.
The fear of the Lord. And so maybe all three of those servants knew each other well. In my mind, they knew each other well, and they talked about God. Well, in this case, they talked about their master. And so they all knew him to be somebody to be respected, to say the least. And so whether or not they all three had fear and trepidation, well, that's okay. To have fear and trepidation. However, two of them, they said, you know what? I'm going to do my best. In my mind, they just said, I don't know. I wish he'd give me more instructions, as I say to God all the time. I wish you'd give me more instructions what to expect in Fiji. Said, just go. I got you. And so two of them just said, you know what? I'm going to do my best. I'm not exactly sure, but I think even this harsh taskmaster, I think he has a heart that will appreciate. And he called the one that didn't do anything with his one talent wicked and lazy. Now, whether or not that means that God means that lazy is wicked, I'm not sure, but that's the harshness. And so it wasn't that he thought of him. So Travis, forgive me for interrupting, but I'm not sure that he was necessarily wrong. He's not a tyrant per se, but he said, for crying out loud,
well,
I expect you to do something, and you didn't even try, let alone do your
well,
best.
And that's where I disagree, though. I think the third one, the other two, we don't know anything about how they viewed the master. But the third one, we know that his view of the master caused him to not do anything out of fear, and that essentially,
that's what it is,
the fear that he had, essentially, from what we can gather, is that he was afraid that if he lost it, if he did not invest it well enough, that he would be punished. And that's where our view is different. Our view of stewardship is that it's not about results. It's about faithfulness.
Yeah.
It's not about, and so, some people would view the things they steward as like, I have to get at the end of my life and have made it worth something. I have to make it worth something.
Right.
Not that I'm just going to give it to God whenever there's opportunity for me to do so and do it to the very best that I can in the moment, but I actually have to make sure that I'm net positive, that it's my responsibility to be net positive. And I don't believe that's God's view of stewardship for us.
That's just too much of a burden.
Yeah,
and it doesn't take into
presumes-
consideration, the simple statement that Jesus said, "It's finished."
Well,
it's finished. So now,
yeah.
do you want to participate?
Yeah.
Is
And
what he
that's-
asks me every day. He comes
Yeah.
and he knocks on the door and he says, "Hey, I'm looking for recruits." And every day I say, "Here am I, Lord."
Yeah.
Okay, I thought so, Steve. Come along.
Yeah.
And way back from the moment I committed to him, I thought I was giving up the fun life. Mm-hmm. And I've always loved adventure. And I thought, well, I'm committing to the Lord. As his ambassador and so on. And so from here on, my life is his, not mine. And so it's the end of fun. It's the end of adventure. I could not have been more wrong.
Yeah.
Stepping out in faith, it doesn't get any more exciting.
Yeah.
Little did I ever dream that I would be requested to go to Fiji.
Yeah.
And that God would provide the resources
Yeah.
to enable that.
Yeah.
Oh, my goodness gracious.
Well, and that the entire time in Fiji, you got to be faithful with what you were given, not that you had to accomplish some end thing. If you had to leave Fiji feeling like, I was able to accomplish these things and I know that they matter for these reasons, that's an extreme burden God hasn't placed on us. You were able to enjoy it while giving everything freely without having to keep tabs on it, without having to be the accountant of your own life to say, this is worthwhile for this reason.
Yep.
If it wasn't worthwhile, I better make sure the next investment, quote, so to speak, is even better to make up for this loss.
Well, exactly. And I feel like that's when that happens, it's when God gives us an opportunity and then we think, oh, it's mine.
Yeah.
It's my opportunity. No.
You start focusing on the
Yeah.
thing, not on God.
I think about, I don't know.
And by the way, those two people in the talents, which that's one of my most important scriptures, the parable of the talents, in my life and at work, one of the very most important. And those two, I don't think, speaking of mindset, never for a second did they think it was theirs. And we don't know, did they get commission? Did they somehow?
Yeah.
Their master was already providing everything they needed.
Yeah.
And so they doubled it and for
With the anticipation of just giving it
master.
back. Yeah.
Yeah.
And never for a second, I don't think, thought of it as their own. So they weren't even motivated to double it or do better, thinking they were going to get anything out of it.
Yeah.
And well done. You did good. Now here's some more of my resources to manage. And I don't think they were expecting that either.
Yeah.
Because, by the way, to whom much is given, much is expected.
Yeah.
And so beware, of when you're asking for more resources, more opportunities.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's just more to steward.
So as we kind of think about this practically here, what would your encouragement be to someone who, because I think you made it clear, we all have opportunities all the time and they happen daily to us. But let's just say you find yourself in opportunity and you want to steward over it well. What's your encouragement to that person?
I would say first to keep your eyes on Jesus. I liked how you mentioned, and I totally agree that, I think we should pray. I don't think it's wrong to pray for opportunity or to pray that God would soften hearts of people around you or be, specifically doing things outside of yourself. But I think we miss a lot if we are not also praying that God would change ourselves, that we would not, that God would open our eyes to see opportunity, that God would change our hearts, that we would care when we see the opportunity, that God would keep our eyes fixed on Him, that the self growth that happens and God changing you from the inside out through this process of stewarding things that are His is a lot of what God even intends with us stewarding to begin with.
Yep.
And so don't miss out on that aspect of it.
And I just think that it's fun. I hope that everybody listening would not be opposed to adventure, excitement. Do you want to have an exciting life? Do you want to have an abundant life?
Yeah.
See, I think the Scripture has the word abundance and abundant life in there more than once for a reason. Because so now we know that if I'm satisfied with just a mundane life, well, that's not what God promises.
Yeah.
And so we need to desire an abundant life as he defines it.
Yeah.
And so these opportunities and not turning them down will allow you to experience a life more abundant, more abundantly for his good pleasure than you ever would. And so assume that you're going to experience more of an abundant life, and you're going to discover. Life is a process of discovery. Your whole life, you're continuing to discover what you were created for. And the longer you live, the more you just get to discover more and more and more. And it's a little bit about, kind of like pushing the envelope, except you're not pushing the envelope. You're the one confined to the envelope. And the Lord is showing that, no, you're not even in an envelope.
Yeah.
Because it's about me. And if you want to think of an envelope, my envelope, Steve. Well, you don't have an envelope. That's my point. And so just accept, embrace. Don't be dumb about it, because he gave us a brain.
Yeah.
There are certain things like if you invited me to go on the worship team, I would do us both a favor and say no.
Yeah.
But so he did give us a brain too. But to just accept those opportunities, but only if you want to have an abundant life, Arthur. If you want to be a couch potato, well, you can probably still get to heaven.
Yeah.
But it's not going to be nearly as abundant as if you look for opportunities and take them and step out in faith that he is going with you, is going to provide all the resources. He's going to provide the talents.
That's so good. Man, I love having a conversation with you guys. Thank you so much, Steve, for coming on.
Yeah.
And
Thank you. It's fun.
Yeah, and thank you so much for watching and listening and following along with us and joining with us as we talk about all these different topics. And I can tell you that I have been thinking about stewardship more than I have before we did this, and I'm thankful for that. And I just love our conversation. I love this idea of taking opportunities, investing in them, and it's not ours, it's his. And so thank you so much. Join us next week as we kind of finish out the topic of stewardship. We look forward to that. As always, God bless.